Stay connected with the world through WION. Like the page on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter for new alerts. Instagram for videos and images. And the website for the latest news, views and analysis. WIONews.com. World is one.
Hello there, you're watching WION World is One. Thank you very much for staying with us and welcome back. I'm Eric Njoka. Let's begin this broadcast with our top stories. Former US President Donald Trump can be heard discussing secret documents he had apparently held on to and acknowledging he had not declassified them in an audio recording aired by CNN. Belarusian president says his country would gain from the war experience of Russia's Wagner mercenary group. Alexander Lukashenko had brokered a deal which ended the mutiny by the Wagner group. The EU strikes a deal to implement internationally agreed banking reforms intended to avert a repeat of the 2008 financial crisis. The World Health Organization's European office warns that the risk of COVID-19 has not gone away, saying it was still responsible for nearly 1,000 deaths a week in that region. Earth lost an area of carbon-absorbing rainforest in 2022 larger than Switzerland or the Netherlands, most of it destroyed to make way for cattle and commodity crops. An analysis of satellite data reveals. And welcome. Former US President Donald Trump is back in the news. An audio clip has emerged of Trump discussing secret classified documents at his New Jersey golf club, providing new evidence that the former president knew of proper declassification procedures. In the leaked audio from July 2021, published by CNN, the former president is so direct in acknowledging that he knows of a document that he has as secret, that it has not been declassified, and that if he was still president, he could declassify it. The recording includes new details that it is a critical piece of evidence in Special Counsel Jack Smith's indictment of Trump over the mishandling of classified information. The 2-minute recording appears to capture Trump discussing documents that detail a potential attack on Iran. In the recording, one can hear Trump say, "I have a big pile of papers." What follows are sounds of someone riffling through pages. The details of the conversation are unclear, but Trump says the documents he is holding proves he is right, but that he cannot share them because they are secret. The audio appears to fly in the face of what has been Trump's defense since the FBI raided his Mar-a-Lago resort and residence last year. They had alleged that Trump had declassified all the documents in his possession, even though there was no record of him having done so. Despite the audio getting leaked, Trump has continuously pleaded not guilty to dozens of criminal counts at the Miami Federal Court. The former head of state is facing 37 felony charges related to the mishandling of classified documents. The prosecutors have accused Trump of endangering national security by holding on to top-secret nuclear and defense documents after leaving the White House. Adele Nazarian is a Media Fellow at the Gold Institute for International Strategy, and she's now joining us from Washington, D.C. Adele, great to see you again. Welcome to the program.
Great to be on with you again. Thank you for having me.
What do you think about the timing of this audio leak? Could it have any impact on the charges that the former U.S. president is currently facing?
I do believe so. I think this was very, very well thought out. I think that, of course, the initial report in the media that there was such an audio recording came out around June 9th, I believe. But then CNN was able to obtain the audio recording itself, I believe, in the past few hours and made it a big news story. But I do believe that this was strategic. I think it's up to the media not only to report on the leaked audio, but to also find out who the reporter was that actually went ahead and recorded it, perhaps. Without giving knowledge to those who were present that there was a recording. Of course, we'd have to see the legality of if it's a one fault state or if it's even legal to record things without giving prior consent, receiving prior consent from those involved. But I do believe that it was definitely something that they had planned to acquire and to use it. And I do think that it will have, unfortunately, a bit of a negative impact on the proceedings. Doesn't look very good.
Adele, if I understand you, are you trying to say that the leaking of the audio recording is illegal?
I don't know the laws surrounding audio recordings depending on states. It's a state-by-state basis, and I don't know what it was in Florida at the time, but I know in certain states like New Jersey, you do have to, and I believe it's California, if I'm not mistaken, but there are laws and legalities surrounding recording audio and getting the consent of those who are also in the room during the recording to make sure that it is legal by all parties or at least one of the parties involved. But I will say this beyond the legality of the recording. It is really something that I believe was planned out. And of course, Trump has many enemies. But I do think that this, unfortunately, the way it's being presented, the way that things occurred, it's not very positive for what's going on regarding his trial, right. Of course.
Adele, what about his bid to be re-elected in 2024? Critics argue that some Americans have lost trust in Trump to be president again. Do you see that, putting in mind Donald Trump is the first president in the United States history to face criminal charges?
I've said this before on the media, and I stand by it. I think this sets a very dangerous precedent, honestly, the way this was handled from the judicial perspective. I think that Trump still has a very strong a base of support, and I think that he has both lost some followers along the way, and he's gained some more new followers and supporters along the way. Whether or not I think it's going to be enough to, let's say he does get the nomination for the Republican ticket, it's too soon to say, but if he does, I think it's still going to be a pretty uphill battle. Right. In terms of everything that he's been facing. The media has done a bang-up job in terms of, carrying out their intentions and their will.
Adele, finally, Trump has always maintained his innocence, even saying some of these cases or charges were a hoax. It's almost 2 years to the general elections. Do you think Trump will be able to save face?
I don't think that it's per se a hoax. I do believe that there are issues that definitely existed. I think there could have been a much more careful handling of certain situations and incidents, knowing that he was so sought after to be destroyed and taken down by the people who were opposed to him. But I do think that there is also still an opportunity because of, unfortunately, what's been going on the, you want to talk about both sides of the aisle, the other side of the aisle. I've had many conversations with Democrats also that tell me that they are extremely concerned and worried with the progressive wing of the party, and that it doesn't align with their values. And I think that at the end of the day, while Trump is obviously not a conservative, he kind of has a myriad of beliefs that stem from, I'd say he takes the best from all of things and puts them into one central area, central arena, central station. I do think that it will be interesting to see how he does come out from all of this. And regarding I do think it's going to be very interesting. It's definitely not going to be boring, but I will say this too. It's always very challenging to unseat an incumbent. So we're in a unique scenario here, unprecedented in so many ways historically. Right. So we'll see how this plays out.
Adel Nazarian is a media fellow at the Gold Institute for International Strategy. She is live in Washington, D.C. Adele, thank you very much for all your inputs and for talking to WION Wild is One today.
Thank you.
Let's move on now. After a weekend of chaos and confusion in Russia, a new report has emerged that states the U.S. learned weeks ago that Wagner Group was planning an insurrection. Multiple U.S. officials told the Washington Post that intelligence agencies learned in mid-June that the Russian mercenary group led by Yevgeny Prigozhin was planning an armed rebellion to take out the country's military leaders, who he has blamed for the bungled invasion of Ukraine. Citing several unnamed sources, the report says that U.S. officials had warned the White House and other U.S. agencies of their intelligence. The exact nature and timing of Prigozhin's plans are not clear until shortly before his stunning takeover of a military command and tank run towards Moscow. Prigozhin's Wagner Group remarkable armed mutiny in Russia started with fighters first seizing the southern Russian city of Rostov-na-Don before marching on the country's capital. Although Prigozhin later stood down his troops, ordering them to return to their camps in order to avoid a Russian bloodshed. While Russian President Vladimir Putin previously vowed to punish the actions of the fighters, Russia later said it would not prosecute any of the troops in exchange for Prigozhin's exile in Belarus. Under the terms of the deal, charges against Prigozhin of leading an armed rebellion would also be dropped. But why was the leader of Wagner Group planning an armed rebellion? According to the report, a key provocation for the Wagner uprising was on June 10th. After Russia's Ministry of Defense announced that all volunteer fighting groups would have to sign government contracts. The announcement was generally seen as a means to bring the mercenary group under official Russian military control. And over the past 2 weeks, according to the U.S. officials who told the Washington Post, there had been high concerns over whether Putin would remain in power and over what kind of instability a Russian civil war might cause. Although U.S. President Joe Biden has dismissed conspiracy theories of Western involvement in the rebellion, saying he coordinated with European leaders on Zoom, stating that they agreed with him that they had to make sure they give Putin no excuse to blame this on the West and to blame this on NATO.
The situation began to develop as it did. I directed my national security team to monitor closely and report to me hour by hour. I instructed them to prepare for a range of scenarios. I also convened our key allies on a Zoom call to make sure we're all on the same page. It's critical that we're coordinated in our response and coordinated in what we to anticipate. They agreed with me that we had to make sure we gave Putin no excuse. Let me emphasize, we gave Putin no excuse to blame this on the West or to blame this on NATO.
Now, in a historic electoral move, Canada's biggest city, Toronto, has elected its first non-white Chinese-Canadian mayor, Olivia Chow. The 66-year-old will also be the first woman to be voted back to power since Barbara Hall in 1997. Now, according to preliminary results, Chow secured 37.2% votes in the election. She previously ran for election 9 years ago and came third. Now, according to reports, the mayor-elect focused her campaign on pledging support to renters and reducing the sweeping powers of her office. In her victory speech, Chow said, and I quote, "I would dedicate myself to work tirelessly in building a city that is more caring, affordable, and safe where everyone belongs." End of quote. Chow has taken over after conservative-leaning Mayor John Tory resigned in February, when the married leader's affair with a staff member came to light. Chow's win comes in the backdrop of a slew of issues being faced by Canada's financial capital, including rising housing costs and an increase in violent attacks on public transit. The mayor-elect has pledged to build over 25,000 rent-controlled homes in 8 years to cut the soaring rent in the city. "23-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich, who shot 5 people dead in a Colorado gay club, has been sentenced to life imprisonment with over 2,000 years in jail. The accused pleaded guilty to 5 counts of first-degree murder and 46 counts of attempted murder. Here now is a report.
To those 5 counts of murder in the first degree, how do you plead?
Guilty.
The person accused of opening fire at a gay nightclub late last year pleaded guilty to 5 counts of first-degree murder and 46 counts of attempted murder in a Colorado court on Monday. The accused, 23-year-old Anderson Lee Aldrich, who identifies as non-binary, also pleaded no contest to 2 counts of bias-motivated crimes. On November 19, 2022, Aldrich, wearing body armor, opened fire at Club Q in Colorado Springs, killing 5 patrons and injuring nearly 24 others before he was overpowered and disarmed by the crowd. The attack sent shockwaves through the LGBTQ community. Aldrich was formally charged last December and did not enter a plea at that time. Monday's guilty plea comes as millions of LGBTQ Americans are taking part in Pride celebrations this month. But amid rainbow flags, colorful costumes, and revelry, there are increased attacks on the community, both online and offline. Here's one spectator at New York City's Pride March.
Our community's under attack, and we need allies, we need the whole community to show up to advocate.
The ACLU has tracked over 450 anti-LGBTQ bills in the 2023 state legislatures, a record high for the last century. And LGBTQ advocacy group GLAAD recorded at least 8 instances of Pride events that had to modify their plans this year due to threats of violence. Following the guilty plea, Aldrich on Monday was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Colorado no longer has a death penalty statute. However, Aldrich could face a death sentence in federal court if prosecutors decide to bring charges under the U.S. Code, which still has capital punishment on its books for certain crimes.
India's biggest aviation merger is now under the scanner. The proposed merger of Air India with Vistara. The Competition Commission of India has issued a show cause to the Tata Group, asking them to respond within 30 days as to why a probe must not be conducted. In April, Tata Group sought an approval from the trade fair regulator to merge Air India and Vistara, with Air India being the surviving entity and the acquisition of shares in the merged entity by Singapore Airlines and Tata Sons PVT Limited. Approval is required from the Competition Commission of India for mergers and acquisitions under Section 5 of the Competition Act. Vistara is owned by Tata's SIA Airlines Limited, a joint venture between Tata Sons Private Limited and Singapore Airlines. Singapore Airlines currently has 49% stake in Vistara. Last November, Tata Group announced the Air India and Vistara merger. Under the deal, the new merger will give Singapore Airlines 25.1% in the enlarged Air India Group. With a fair trade regulator now stepping in, it is expected to review the merger proposal through 2 phases of investigation. It will find out whether the merger is likely to affect the competition market in India. It will also probe a potential fallout on competition due to the merger. Tata Group has been given 30 days' time to answer the show cause notice, failing which CCI will go ahead with the investigation. Indigo dominates Indian skies with a market share of more than 60%, while Air India and Vistara together have a market share of 18.4%. The Air India Vistara merger is expected to give a stiff competition to rival airlines. Lewis Capaldi faced an unexpected challenge at the 2023 Glastonbury Festival this weekend when he lost his voice mid-performance. But the singer was in luck as his loyal fans rushed to his rescue. The 26-year-old began experiencing Tourette's syndrome symptoms at the start of his set. They intensified while he was performing his mega hit, Someone You Loved. Capaldi pressed on despite facing the setback, and much to his delight, his fans stepped in and lent him their vocal support. They sang the rest of the song as the singer took a backseat. The Scottish musician was visibly moved by this display of affection as he walked off the stage afterwards. He repeatedly apologized to the crowd and thanked them for their support. The difficult yet heartfelt performance comes in the midst of Capaldi's mental health struggles. He had earlier cancelled all of his tour dates leading up to Glastonbury. Towards the end of his set, Capaldi announced that he will be taking more time away from the public eye to address his mental health. Time now for sports. Saudi Arabia's domination of the global football headlines continue. The exodus of some of the top names in European football to the kingdom has been backed up by a first ever FIFA tournament in the country. Jeddah will host the 2023 FIFA Club World Cup, Jeddah was finalized as the venue following a FIFA delegation visit to the city last week to assess ongoing preparations for the tournament. It is the latest high-profile international football event that will be played in the kingdom as they continue their